Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max. සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට MySLT app එකට log වෙන්න. Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max. සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට MySLT app එකට log වෙන්න.
Lifebuoy shampoo ලෙති කිරි ප්‍රෝටීන් සහ මල්ටිවිටමින් හිස කෙස් මුල සිට පෝෂණය කර ශක්තිමත් කරයි.
Tonight, expenses and income. Appropriation bill for the year 2023 to be tabled in Parliament for second reading on the 14th of November. Providence. Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank outlines $100 million for Sri Lanka, given its economic crisis. Free trade. Ambassador of Thailand to Sri Lanka, Poj Hanpol, expects Thai FTA discussions with Sri Lanka to resume early next year. No resemblance. 21st Amendment regrettably does not completely restore the status quo ante, which prevailed prior to the 20th Amendment, says Bar Association of Sri Lanka. All this and much more coming up tonight on First at 9, this Thursday the 27th of October 2022.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9, live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Very good evening and welcome to AdaDerana 24's English News. I'm Andrew Bernard. Now, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank has allocated $100 million to Sri Lanka in its annual financial report that was launched today. Now, Beijing headquartered AIB's annual infrastructure finance report published today lays out its stance for what is shaping up to be a difficult United Nations Climate Change COP27 summit that is planned to be held next month. The Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank announced that it has outlined a fund of $100 million for crisis-hit Sri Lanka. The China-backed bank has also pledged support for countries facing serious debt problems. In addition, the AIIB is expected to announce a major support package for Pakistan at the upcoming COP summit, following the country's devastating floods. Beijing-headquartered bank's annual infrastructure finance report published today lays out its stance for a difficult United Nations Climate Change COP27 summit in Egypt next month. It called for heavily polluting state-owned firms to be rapidly turned into green energy leaders, putting special focus on China, India and Indonesia, noting that a global net zero transition would not succeed without their cooperation. The report called for pollution-cutting technologies to be shared globally and for countries to stop subsidizing fossil fuels, something many have done this year as Russia's invasion of Ukraine sent energy prices soaring so that a meaningful carbon price can emerge and make investing in fossil fuels more costly. Now, the Committee on Parliamentary Business has decided that the 2023 appropriation bills should be tabled in Parliament for the second reading on the 14th of November. The committee met under the chairmanship of Speaker of Parliament Mahinda Yapa Abeyewardena. Accordingly, President Ranil Wickremesinghe, in his capacity as the Minister of Finance, Economic Stabilisation and National Policies, is to deliver the opening speech of the second reading of the appropriation bill at 1:30 p.m. on the 14th of November. The debate on the second reading of the appropriation bill will begin on the 15th of November, and the vote on the second reading is scheduled for the 22nd of November at 5 p.m. The debate on the committee stage of the appropriation bill will meanwhile be held on the 23rd of November, with the vote decided to be held on the 8th of December at 5 p.m. Accordingly, Parliament will meet on all other days of the week except on Sundays and holidays from the 14th of November to the 8th of December. Now, the government has decided to facilitate working capital loans of up to 10 million rupees to small and medium-scale entrepreneurs through 8 state-owned and private banks. $13.5 million, which is about 4.9 billion Sri Lankan rupees of funds from the Asian Development Bank, has been redisbursed to relevant banks for this purpose. In a bid to rebuild and strengthen small and medium-scale enterprises affected by the ongoing economic crisis, the Ministry of Finance has decided to grant working capital loans to SMEs. In a statement, the Finance Ministry said small and medium-scale entrepreneurs can now obtain up to 10 million rupees at 11 to 12% interest with 6 months grace period and a 3-year payment gateway. The scheme, which is funded by the Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises Line of Credit project under the Asian Development Bank, will provide loan facilities under three components: SME Credit Line, T-Smallholder Credit Line, and Emergency Response Facility. Under the SME Credit Line, investment loans will be provided to SMEs, while the Emergency Response Facility will provide working capital loans to micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises. The tea smallholder credit line will provide finance for tea planting, replanting purposes, and infrastructure development purposes for tea smallholders. The ministry has stated that working capital loans can be obtained from the Bank of Ceylon, Regional Development Bank, Hatton National Bank, Commercial Bank, Ceylon Bank, National Development Bank, Nations Trust Bank, and Sampath Bank. The Finance Ministry added that a fund of $13.5 million from the ADB has been dispersed to banks for this purpose. Now, in a gazette issued by President Ranil Wickremesinghe yesterday, the Telecommunication Regulatory Commission of Sri Lanka has been removed from the purview of the Ministry of Defence. The TRCSL is now placed under the purview of the Ministry of Technology. The gazette moves that the Ministry of Technology will promote sustained development in the telecommunication industry by shaping the regulatory process, protecting public interest, and being responsive to challenges in an increasingly competitive market. The Ministry of Technology has also been tasked with matters relating to the expansion of digital technology ventures and providing technical assistance to the relevant ministries for developing green technology projects. President Ranil Wickremesinghe issued the gazette in his capacity as the Minister of Technology. Now, the ambassador of Thailand to Sri Lanka, Poj Hanpul, says he expects negotiations on the Sri Lanka-Thailand Free Trade Agreement to resume by early 2023. Addressing a discussion on Sri Lanka and Thailand bilateral trade and investment organized by the National Chamber of Commerce, the Thai envoy said a positive outcome from the discussions can be expected by the end of next year. A discussion on Sri Lanka and Thailand bilateral trade and investment organized by the National Chamber of Commerce was held under the patronage of Ambassador of Thailand to Sri Lanka, Poj Hanpul.
Sri Lanka export to Thailand average annually $50 million on the rise, whereas Thailand export to Sri Lanka remains about 400 annually, roughly. And in this, there is a need, there is a chance to get expansion. And even during the COVID era, there is also some substantial progress in trade volume. And in this light, with the change of administration, the present government, there would be a kind of political will to move Sri Lanka into an exported-oriented economy. And in this light, in this backdrop, the Sri Lanka-Thailand FTA, which was initially started in 2018 with a view to reach the ambition of $1.5 billion trade volume. But that did not happen because of COVID, because of many things. But recently, I have talked with the BOI, I've talked to the presidential office. It is Sri Lanka intention of resuming the talk of Sri Lanka-Thailand Free Trade Agreement, FTA, that there would be, in general, in the long run, there will be trade in goods, rules of origin, sanitary, physiosanitary, technical barrier on trade, and all that. That's some items that would be discussed during the FTA negotiation with the trade negotiation committee, which is already in place. Let us be practical and realistic. There are things more to be done, but we hope that negotiation will resume early next year, and by the end of 2023, there would be the so-called, as you know, low-hanging fruits outcome of that process of negotiation.
Now, Presidential Advisor on Climate Change, Ruwan Wijewardena, today instructed officials to expedite the land acquisition process in order to proceed with the plans for the establishment of a new hospital. The project comes as part of the Wellness Village project, which aims to promote medical tourism in the country with the intention of attracting more tourists to the country. A discussion on the acquisition of land for the construction of a new hospital under the Wellness Village concept adjacent to the Biyagama Hospital was held today. The meeting, which was carried out today at the Presidential Secretariat, was held under the patronage of Presidential Advisor on Climate Change, Ruwan Wijewardena. Based on the concept of President Ranil Wickremesinghe, the Wellness Village concept is being implemented for the first time in Sri Lanka to promote medical tourism. The fully equipped hospital with all facilities will be on par with international standards, is to be constructed mainly targeting foreign tourists. Having looked into the plans of the hospital, Ruwan Wijewardena instructed the officials to expedite the land acquisition process. Stay with us for more news after this short break.
අයිනෝ පුතා හැබැයියා ගෙදර නිදියන්නෙම අමූතු තැනක.
කාලගුණය කොහොමුණත් රයිනෝ නං වාලට සේෆ් තමයි මුළු ගෙදරම. Rhino Cement Roofing Sheets. Then you know Rhino. I know.
Big 3.
Welcome back. Now, leader of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, former President Mahinda Rajapaksa, says the only party that is ready to accept the challenges of the country that is faced with is the SLPP. Addressing a public rally in Puttalam, former President Rajapaksa said they are ready to face elections anytime, adding that the SLPP will rise with a mechanism to rebuild the nation from this economic challenge. A public rally of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna was held today in Arachikattu in Puttalam under the patronage of former President Mahinda Rajapaksa.
කොයිඩ් වලින් පසුව සිදුවුණු ආර්ථික විපර්යාසය ගැන ඔබට වැටහීමක් තියෙනවා. හැබැයි ඊළඟට ආපු ආර්ථික අභියෝගය අදටත් අපි හැමෝටම විශාල අභියෝගයක් වෙලා තියෙනවා. මෙන්න මේ ජනතා පීඩනය තමයි ඇතමෙක් වැරදි විදියට ප්‍රයෝජන ගන්න. සමහරු ජනතාව උසි ගන්නන්න හදනවා. හැබැයි රට වෙනුවෙන් වගකීම් ගන්න කිව්වම ඒ කට්ටිය බෑ කියනවා. අපේ ක්‍රමය රට වැටෙනු තැනින් ගොඩනගන එක මිසක් ආයේ මේ රට ආපස්සට ඇදලා දාන ක්‍රමයක් නෙවෙයි. අපි හිට ගන්න ඕන හදන පැත්තේ මිසක් රට ගිනි තියන පැත්තේ නෙවෙයි. 100%කින් නැතත් ඔබට තිබෙන ප්‍රශ්න අපි එකින් එක අද විසඳමින් යනවා. අපි පිළිගන්නවා මේ ප්‍රශ්න අපි විසඳන්න ඕන කළ යුතු කාර්යයක්. හැබැයි ජනතාව කුලප්පු කරන ප්‍රශ්න විචාරය කරව පමණින් මේ ප්‍රශ්න අවසානට විසඳන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. හැම ප්‍රශ්නයකටම මුහුණ දෙන්න වෙන්නේ ප්‍රශ්න වලට බය නැතුව රටේ අභියෝගේ බාර ගන්න කණ්ඩායම අදත් ඊට සුදුසු පිරිස ශ්‍රී ලංකා පොදු ජන පෙරමුණ විතරක් බව අපි ඔබට මතක් කරන්න ඕනේ. මැතිවරණයකට උනත් අපි ඕන වෙලාවක ලෑස්ති කියලා. අපි අද යෝජනා කරන්නේ එක්ව නැගිටිමු කියලා. අපි නැගිටින්නේ මේ රට මුහුණ දෙන ආර්ථික අභියෝගයන් මේ රට ඊතර කරන වැඩපිළිවෙල එක්ක බව අපි ඔබට විශ්වාසයෙන් මතක් කරනවා.
The Bar Association of Sri Lanka says that the 21st Amendment regrettably does not completely restore the status quo ante which prevailed prior to the 21st Amendment. The association said any failure of the 21st Amendment to address the issue of creating strong independent institutions in the country will also have a bearing on future law reform initiatives such as the proposed composite anti-corruption law and will have an adverse impact on the rule of law in the country as well. In a statement, the Bar Association of Sri Lanka says that the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution, which has now been renamed as the 21st Amendment, regrettably does not completely restore the status quo ante which prevailed prior to the 20th Amendment to the Constitution and does not replace adequate checks and balances on the powers of the Executive President. However, the BSL said it is essential that the Constitutional Council which is to be appointed and the independent commissions which will be reconstituted be independent, impartial and be institutions which will help restore confidence in Sri Lanka. As such, the Bar Association of Sri Lanka called upon the President, Prime Minister, the Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition and all political parties representing the Parliament to firstly ensure the integrity of all nominations to the Constitutional Council and to ensure that such nominations are devoid of partisanship and in a manner that will inspire public confidence. For this purpose, the Bar Association said it is important to ensure that the non-ex officio members of the Constitutional Council appointed from among members of Parliament and from among non-members of Parliament be done in a transparent and open manner, and to also ensure that those appointed will be acceptable to the members of the public and be persons of the highest integrity and reputation. They say that the establishment of the Constitutional Council should thereafter adopt a transparent, open and inclusive process by which it nominates chairpersons and members of the independent commissions and other institutions established by the Constitution and other laws. The BSL noted that upon the enactment of the 21st Amendment, the chairpersons and members of the independent commissions will cease to hold office upon these commissions being reconstituted. In doing so, the association says it is imperative that those appointed to the Election Commission, the Public Service Commission, the National Police Commission, the Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka, the Commission to investigate allegations of bribery or corruption, the Finance Commission, and the Delimitation Commission be persons who not only possess the requisite qualifications and abilities, but also be those whose appointments receive wide acceptance. Now, opposition leader Sajith Premadasa says that they will set out in protest with the people if the government attempts to increase electricity tariffs once again. In the meantime, the independent parliamentarian Dr. Nalaka Godaheva called on the government to resign if they are unable to manage the country's problems.
මේ දුවිත්ත පුරවැසිකම තියාගෙන අපි දැක්ක බැසිල් රාජපක්ෂ මහත්තයා 2015 මේ 2022 පැනලා ගිය විදිය. මේගොල්ලෝ ඇවිල්ලා මේ රටේ අද අති වෙලා තියෙන බංකොලොත් භාවයට ඍජුවම වග කියන්න ඕනේ. ඉතින් ඒක හින්දා තමයි මේ දුවිත්ත පුරවැසියන් හට ඡන්දය ඉල්ලීමේ අවස්ථාව නැති කරපු එක ගැන අපි ඉතාම සන්තෝෂ වෙනවා.
ජනාධිපතිවරයෙක් ගෙදර ඇරලා අනුත් ජනාධිපතිවරයෙක් ආවට පස්සේ හුඟක් අය හිතුවා ප්‍රශ්නේ විසඳෙයි කියලා. අද වනතුරු කිසිම දෙයක් ලැබෙන්නේ නැහැ. අපි මේ අර මොකක්ද එක වැටෙනකම් බලන් ඉන්නවා වගේ මේ IMF එකෙන් 2.9 බිලියන් එකක් එනකම් බලන් ඉන්නවා. ඒකවත් නැහැ. මේ අවුරුදු දෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඔය යන විදිහට එන අවුරුදු මාර්තු විතර වෙයි. ඒ නිසා මේ ආණ්ඩුව කරන්නේ ඇත්තටම ආර්ථික ඝාතනයක්. ඒ නිසා අපි කියන්නේ දෙයියන්ගේ නාමෙට කරන්න බැරි නම් කරන්න පුළුවන් කෙනෙකුට දීලා යන්න කියලා.
විදුලි බිල වැඩි කරා නේද? මෙන්න ආපහු වැඩි කරනවලු. කොහොමද රටේ ජනතාව ජීවත් වෙන්නේ? මම පැහැදිලිවම ආණ්ඩුවට කියන්න කැමතියි. ඔයගොල්ලන්ට ඕන වෙලාවට බිල වැඩි කරපු යුගයට අපි අවසාන තිත තබනවා. එන්න එපා විදුලි බිලට අත තියන්න. අනිවාර්යෙන්ම මේ රටේ ලක්ෂ 220ත් එක්ක අපි මහා පාරට බහැලා. මෙදා පාර අරගලේ අවසන් වන්නේ පොදු ජන ආණ්ඩුව බිහි කිරීමෙන් පමණක් යයි කියන එක මම මේ අවස්ථාවේ ප්‍රකාශ කරනවා.
Welcome back. In your business news, an extraordinary gazette revising the fees levied on the registration of public and private sector companies and societies, along with several other charges that come under the Companies Act, has been issued. The gazette notification was published by President Ranil Wickremesinghe in his capacity as the Finance Minister. Accordingly, registration fees of 25 types of companies and societies have been amended. The amended fee for registering a private limited company, which was 4,000 rupees, has been increased to 4,600 rupees, while the revised fee for a public limited company registration is 23,000 rupees from 20,000 rupees earlier. Further, the amended fee for the approval of a company's name, which is now 2,300 rupees. The new rate for registration of a society is 3,450 rupees, which was earlier 3,000 rupees. The Sri Lankan shares closed high today, helped by gains in industrial and financial stocks. The CSE All Share Index closed 2.32% higher at 8,802.23 yesterday. The index had closed 1.02% higher. Conglomerate Expo Lanka Holdings PLC and LOLC Holdings PLC added the most to index, rising 4.2% and 6.4% respectively. Trading volume on the CSE All Share Index rose to 58.9 million shares from 56.9 million in the previous session. Meanwhile, the market turnover was 1.31 billion Sri Lankan rupees, or $3.62 million. Foreign investors, meanwhile, were net buyers in the equity market, purchasing 206.2 million rupees of shares, while domestic investors were net sellers, offloading stocks worth 1.29 billion rupees. Now, the European Central Bank announced Thursday a 75 basis point interest rate hike, its third consecutive increase this year, also scaling back on support for the European banks. Following much speculation by market participants, the ECB said it was now changing the terms and conditions of its targeted longer-term refining operations or targeted long-term refinancing operations. These are tools that provides European banks with attractive borrowing conditions designed to intensify lending to the real economy. However, because the ECB has been increasing rates faster than expected in the face of soaring inflation, European lenders are benefiting from both targeted long-term refinancing operations and higher interest rates. The situation has been described as effectively providing a subsidy to the banks. In a statement, the ECB said during the acute phase of the pandemic, this instrument played a key role in countering downside risks to the price stability. It also said today, in view of the unexpected and extraordinary rise in inflation, it needs to be recalibrated. Therefore, it added that the interest rates applicable to the tool known as targeted long-term refinancing operations would be adjusted from the 23rd of November in March, the deposit facility rate, which is the main benchmark of the ECB. The additional banks will also be offered voluntarily early repayment rates. And that's all we have for you this evening. Join us again tomorrow at the same time. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.